Good morning. How are you guys? Good. All right, we'll wait a couple minutes and I'll just go ahead and before we really dive into the deep, fun material for today, I'll just jump into our little spiel so that everybody who is watching the recording is able to see and get a full grasp of everything that is going on today. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm Laura, and I'm a career coach and strategist. I was one of the three co-founders of Empowering Perspective in Hanoi back in 2017. And we are so lucky today we have one of the other co-founders on the call, Mary Warner. I have lived in 8 countries over the span of nearly 20 years and am regularly in search of my community. And I found quickly that a lot of other people were the same. So Empowering Perspectives was founded on that principle that there is magic in the connections that we can make when we're able to meet in person, and that we're able to lift each other up in our own individual ways when we are able to gather. Because of COVID, of course, we had to move online, and it's been an interesting experiment over the last few months. I'm excited, so excited to say that soon Hanoi is going to be able to go back to meeting in person. The rules and regulations that are in place there have allowed people to start to gather en masse. And so we're going to shoot for a November reopen of the in-person meetings in Hanoi. And hopefully that will be the first of many communities to be able to meet again in person. And I see Julia Cope is on the line from Manila. Julia, I'm really hoping that you can help me out there in Manila to get that group going again in person and live.
I'll do whatever I can for you, Laura.
Yay! Thank you, Julia. That'll be exciting. Well, and every month we meet on the 3rd Tuesday, online so far, or for the past few months, but hopefully in person again in the coming months, hopefully very soon. And as we were talking about before, powerful shifts happen when we are together, when we listen to each other, when we share, when we put out those I am declarations and let the world know what we're working on or towards. So excited to see other people joining in on our call. Welcome to all. And I'd love to hear from each of you where you're calling in from. If there are any specific questions that you want to make sure we address today in the session, feel free to put it right in the chat box so that we can go back and address each one as they come in turn. And you know, we really want this to be an interactive session. So please, oh please, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have anything that you want to contribute, do so. Raise that hand. I'll make sure that you are recognized and that you're unmuted and that we are able to make this a conversation rather than me talking at anybody in particular. Oh, and while everybody is joining in, I want to remind everybody that we are recording the session for people who couldn't attend the live. So please remember, if you don't mind your image being recorded, fantastic. We love seeing your beautiful faces. If, however, you prefer that not be blasted around the internet, then go ahead and turn off your video so that we can make sure to protect that confidential setting for you. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Paul Lewis. Paul and I actually met in Hanoi in 2016, I believe it was, when he and I were both assigned there as accompanying partners to our spouses who were both working at the embassy. Paul, in his own right, is a motivational speaker, thought leader, author, master of the martial arts, tea connoisseur, and this is what we're going to talk about today, a performance coach. He has founded a company called the Immortal Executive, based on the principle that he wants to live to 120 years strong and help other people to live up to their potential as well. He offers one unique mission: to create healthy, resilient leaders, powerful performers who live to their potential and sustain their unstoppable best. Paul has lived and worked all over the world, both as a professional and as an accompanying partner, as I just mentioned. And all of these incredible factors are why he is our great speaker for today, this month's theme being presence. And Paul is going to talk to us about his work with those super stressed out executives, executive level professionals, and the methods that he uses to help those people create strong foundations for positive, sustainable change. And I really believe that in some way, all of us are just like those top level executives, stressed out in our own ways. So Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. Hey, everyone. Great that you have a vibrant community from all over the world. recognizing that, we all live in challenging and somewhat difficult times. And, it's what I see on a daily basis with my clients and with the people around me. Effectively, we function as high level, high energy performers, a lot of us. Some of us don't necessarily live to experience our potential, but the whole idea is, how do we hone in on that potential? Look for something with greater clarity, greater purpose. And, as you say in Japan, that ikigai, that purpose that you wake up for in the morning, that carries you throughout the day, and you carry yourself with it. So 3 variables which I focus on with my clients are the physical, the physiological, and the cognitive. Learning how to function in your business.
Oh, and it looked like we lost Paul just for a second. Is everybody else still on?
And I'll explain a little bit about what this. Did we lose connection?
Just for a second. We're back on.
Okay, we're back on. And I'll explain the connection, the simple connection between tea and the tea ceremony, how we remain present, balanced, and create greater purpose in our lives.
So I'm not really sure what we missed in that little pause, but I want to make sure to go back and ask very specifically. So presence and the tea ceremony. Why don't we just go ahead and jump in, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So the tea ceremony. So many years ago, living in Asia and experiencing Asia, and even prior to that, the tea ceremony, that was something that was really profound for me. It was a way of connecting, creating greater purpose with the element of stillness, and how we can communicate with something that is seemingly intangible, but allows us to step back and create greater balance, greater awareness, a greater identity, and a better communication with everything around us. So there's an energetic level of how we interact in the tea ceremony and how we prosper in our daily lives. The ceremony itself is very profoundly instilled in Japanese culture. It originated in China and has begun to spread its wings throughout the world. The whole idea is to use the tea ceremony as a metaphor of communication. When we sit opposite someone, we slow down, we remain present, and we create a divide between what we experience on the outside and what we purposely create on the inside, in a state of harmony and our own personal awareness.
So what I love about this, Paul, is that when you first told me about your business concept and the people with whom you work, these high-level executives, and I always picture, and I know this is totally a stereotype, but a middle-aged man wearing a suit, kind of frazzled because he's been running around all day. He's been in a meeting, he's been on the phone, he's been running around here and there and the other place. He does not have time for a tea ceremony. He does not have time to call his mom. He doesn't have time to do all these things that are part of regular life. And the idea then of you getting this person to sit down for a tea ceremony. Talk us through that process and the literal transformation that you see when that happens.
Great question and great observation. Yes, there are a lot of people out there who live their very rigid lives. They're power motivated. They are highly focused. They're intentional, yet they lack the ability to be able to sit down one-on-one and create dialogue, conversation, and effective communication. So when I first interact with someone, I have a stipulation. We'll meet in my territory, and I will prepare for them through servitude. I will prepare for them the tea ceremony to help open formal dialogue. And it's amazing when we first sit down and we begin to discuss some of their issues through observation and awareness, I can begin to see how they function, how they dysfunction, and what we do to interact, to get through that first level, to get through that first layer, to begin to unravel the onion, to understand what it is that holds them back, what it is that undermines their ability to perform optimally and effectively, and how we begin to chip away at the edges to reveal the real person. Because the whole idea is to create an area of honesty and transparency. And unless we can do that, we hold on to the rigid communication and we don't make breakthroughs. So that communication, that ability to break through, and that communication begins to become very effective once we begin to break through that initial level or that initial layer.
And just the process of slowing down. And actually, I have two quick memories that I think really helped me understand the concept of presence and how important it was in my life. The first being that when I was in Hanoi, I was meeting with a friend, actually one of our co-founders, Lucy. And I met her at a coffee shop, and we had sat down, we had our coffees in front of us, we were sipping. And I was completely not paying attention to what she was saying. My mind was in another place, doing another thing. I was 10 steps ahead. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got this thing to do at 1, I've got another thing to do at 2:30. And my mind was racing like this, and I was not paying attention. And it was later, I think, when I was talking to you that I realized I was not there for Lucy. Even though I was in body right next to her, I was not actually conversing. I was not really engaging in that conversation. And the tea ceremony, you and I see there's Laura is on the call. Laura and I were a part of a small group in Hanoi that got together one time with you for a tea ceremony. And you really slowed us down and helped us to view the vessel, smell the tea, sip the tea, and take our time going through that process. And little did we realize, of course, that you were taking in observations of all of us and how we were reacting to that process of slowing down. And what was interesting, and this is memory number 2, is that last year about this time, I had a friend come and visit from the States. And she's British. And, I mean, again, stereotype, she loves her tea. So we went to a tea house here in Tokyo, and we sat down and we ordered, I think it was a matcha or green tea, one of the house favorites. And she gulped it down. I said, no, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to smell it. And then her phone came out and she was doing the texting and all the things. And I thought, oh my gosh, I might have actually learned something here from Paul about slowing down and enjoying these moments. Because even though we're not traditional executives in high-level companies, we also are on the go, go, go all the time. And this methodical slowing down is incredibly helpful in so many ways. And that same experience is how you leverage the beginnings of your client relationships.
Absolutely. And I just want to share with you that I had a client, listen, I have a really vibrant energy. It's late at night here. I'm excited to be with everyone, but now I'm in my very yin stage. When I'm functioning and interacting with people throughout the day, I have that energy that you have. I'm not sipping matcha tea at the moment. I'm actually sipping a pu'er tea, a shao pu'er tea, which is very, very grounding. And I'll just share with you, actually, I have a piece here. It comes in a block from Yunnan province, China. And it actually is one of my favorite teas. It allows me to center myself and remain still. So that's where I am at the moment, sipping my tea. But I'm going to get into your energy at the moment. Because even though it's late at night here, this is where I function at my best. When somebody sits opposite me, and again, it's a matter of observation, I've got to be able to hit them right between the eyes at their level. And you're right, most executives come to the table thinking to themselves, okay, what do I need? What do you want from me? What can you offer me? But before somebody, and here's a prime example, a secretary of a client of mine called me to say, okay, I've heard about you. I want my boss to connect with you. And she said to me, I'd like you to come to the office. I said, fantastic. That's not going to happen. If your boss wants to speak with me, I'm prepared to do so, but he'll come to my home, we'll have a discussion, and we'll sit and converse over the tea ceremony. I do this over Zoom too. The whole idea is to create a transition out of the work environment, because I want to get to the essence of who that person is, understanding how they function, understanding how they dysfunction. What's their purpose? What's their intent? What are their motives? What are they missing out on? And what could they potentially do to impact the way they perform, function, and execute in every aspect of their life, not only in the workplace, but outside the workplace? There's a whole person that we want to get hold of to understand what they can hit home with and how we can create an individualized, distinctive program focused around exactly what they want, get them what they want, but also allow them to shift out of their comfort zone to understand that they can transition into a state of centeredness, balance, and stillness, which is critical to spring forward to greater performance. And we'll talk about stillness because I know that's where you're going to go.
Oh, well, actually, the thing that popped into my head as you were talking was that in the beginning of our talk today, you mentioned that your approach covers three main areas: the physical, the physiological, and the mental. And as you were talking about focus, it reminded me of the metaphor that you provided about in our last talk about getting ready to shoot an arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk us through that?
Absolutely. So the Japanese have a wonderful format of archery, and this is the foundation for any martial art. And I've been involved in the martial arts since I was 8. So the whole idea is to look for the target, not adjust the body physically, but to get in touch with how you're functioning in the moment. There's an element of presence that we need for everything that we do. You're not just guiding the arrow. The arrow is an extension of the body. The bow is an extension of the body. The variables that surround us, as Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, you've got to know what the external environment is going to do to your progress forward. So when you align yourself and you're looking for that target, you've got to enter it from a state of emptiness. You've got to clear your mind. You've got to be prepared, and I don't like to use this because it's overkill, to come with the empty glass. To be able to be present, discern from what's happening around you, to be able to target your objective in a way where you are well-grounded, defying gravity, focused on your path forward, knowing that you've done your due diligence, you're motivated, intentional, you've practiced relentlessly, and you turn up. And that's that ability to remain still. Because out of stillness comes great movement and potential.
And I love this concept of and with the arrow, you're always thinking about, how you have to have that moment of stillness where you even, I think in practicing archery, not that I've ever done it, but don't you hold your breath for a second before you release too? So it's really full stillness before you start the motion.
Right, but there's so much more than that. It's the grounding. It's the ability to focus and just to let go. So if any of you have played golf out there, it's the same concept. You've done the preparation, years and years of preparation. You come up to the green, you lean forward, you let everything go, everything flows. You've done the visualization. You know that you can see that target, that endpoint, that hole, whatever it is you're shooting for. You know you've done your due diligence, and you act accordingly by letting go and focusing on presence and emptiness. It's a very profound philosophy, and it's something that we don't necessarily appreciate in Western society, but it's something that's very profound and happens in everything that I see when I step into Asia. And so my whole idea is to bring the essence of Eastern and Western modalities to help people ground themselves, to understand that momentum comes from stillness, comes from a place of quiet. That's where real kinetic energy comes from, potential energy and grounding.
And you're talking a lot about grounding and presence and stillness. And I think in the West, the first thing that we think about is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really difficult time meditating. I think there are a lot of people out there who have a difficult time meditating. What are other ways that people can find this moment of stillness and be able to center themselves and ground so that they are able to start that forward momentum?
It's really interesting because anything that impacts you to slow down and to shut down is a form of meditation. Tea, for instance, is synonymous in the East with meditation. Being able to quiet your mind, learning to become part of the cup, part of the liquid essence of the tea. The focus is there, the intent is there. What is meditation? It's the ability to be able to focus and then let go. And any intervention that can alter the way that you think, process, filter, execute, and perform is a great step forward to initiate greater intent and greater purpose. So, for example, somebody comes to me and we sit down and have a tea ceremony. The first thing I say to them, irrespective of whether you enjoy tea or not, it's not about the tea. It's about sitting in the space. And sitting in the space, which is conducive to conversation, is a form of meditation. So that meditation allows for direct conversation. And that direct conversation allows people to open up. Your best thoughts are done when you can step away from your challenging environment. And because we live in a society where we're on the go, we fail to step back and remain still and remain present. So whatever it is that you relate to, that's a form of meditation. It's an intervention that alters the way you think, alters the way you process. When you can do that, what you do is you refine your energy. When you refine your energy, that's when you begin altering how you connect with your outside world. And it's a very powerful connect because it influences your ability as an executive, as a business owner, as a human being to step back and look in. And ultimately, that's what meditation is. It's your ability to step back and look in, to influence everything you do on a daily basis.
I'm having a really funny thought right now that I'm going to share. This is a little bit of a risk, but then I would, after this, like to move into this great exercise that you prepared for us to get us all to move into stillness and then back into motion. It just occurred to me. So my mother was a smoker all the way through her life. And ironically, she was a nurse. But she pointed out to me one time, and I'm not advocating smoking. I'm not, promoting this in any way, but that the reason that so many people are, that cigarettes can be appealing is because it forces you to go outside, number one. So you're leaving your office space or your space where you're all sorts of stressed out and you're going outside. And then number two, you're taking deep breaths. And you're usually not doing anything else. Or maybe you're talking to someone else who's doing the same thing, being outside and taking deep breaths. And so that's why for a lot of people, it was a calming activity, especially in the 60s and 70s when she was, at her peak of smoking. And so in today's kind of metaphor, taking a walk outside, going and sitting at a coffee shop and not having your phone on, but just looking around, what's going on around you, looking up or looking down, right? Instead of just on the screen, but taking a minute just to see what is going on around you. To when I'm working and having my kids coming in and saying, give me just 1 minute to finish this, and then I can focus 100% on you, kind of segmenting the things. Would love it if you could now lead us into, oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to interject for a second because you said something really powerful, is looking up. I'm a photographer. It's one of my great passions. I love carrying as you know, I love carrying my camera around wherever I was in Hanoi, and I've got some great portrait photography and great other photography that I've taken over the years. And it's that presence to be able to stand behind that lens, to be able to get into the great outdoors and do. And it reminds me of when we were in Hanoi, and Laura, you remember the historic district, being able to walk through the historic district. It's not until I carried my camera and really looked up that I saw a different world. And that was a place where you can spend months and years just photographing different scenes all the time and not be bored. It's that presence of standing behind the lens. It's that ability to make a decision to get up during work and walk outside. It's to stand up, sit down, stand up and sit down, exercising every half hour. Listen, I'm not an advocate of smoking, never have been. I can't stand it, to be honest with you. Sorry if some of you do smoke, but the reality is that, my objective is to live to 120. My goals are heading outdoors when I can, of jumping into my ice bath first thing in the morning of winter, of just altering my psyche when I can, because I'm busy and I'm going and I'm interacting with people all the time. When I can step back and center myself, which I highly recommend for all of us, is when I really begin to fly. And I talk about this idea of optimizing performance. Because when you're shooting for 120 years old, 120 powerful years young, then you've got to make the proactive decisions to get you there. So on a daily basis, I'm fine-tuning and honing in what step can I do to alter and reframe how I think, how I process, how I filter out information, how I do the little things to alter how I shut down. So for me, I sip tea throughout my day because it's a reminder for me that I'm creating presence and stillness, even though I'm interacting at 100 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour where you are. The objective is to remain, to find that balance between growth and renewal. And it really needs to be on an ongoing basis, day in and day out. We're not shooting for the sprint. Life's all about the marathon. It's about getting to where you want to get to with greater purpose and intent, smooth steps along the way, knowing that there is adversity, and making sure that you're refining your approach, your scheduling, the time that you have in your day. But everything that underlies that is your energy, how you function physically, physiologically, cognitively. They're all interconnected. Mm-hmm. And that is the power of self-mastery.
We've got a great question in the chat box from Karen. It's a multi-part question, but it's the perfect time to ask this. Thank you so much, Karen, for this great question. Could you please describe the difference between the physical and the physiological? Also, in regards to the whole person, do you address the emotional and spiritual aspects of a person's existence? And if so, how do you incorporate them?
Okay. So the first question, let's take it step by step, Laura. The physical and the physiological. The physical is everything you see on the outside. And I remember when I did some presentations at the the American embassy in Vietnam with some of the State Department personnel and eligible family members. One of the things that we really honed in on was having a really good look at ourselves, what we see on the outside, and also what we see or what we experience on the inside. The way I did that was to have people stand in front of a mirror. I asked them to go home, not do it right there, to go home, buck naked, stand in front of a mirror, look at their countenance, and see what they see as an observation. It was a really, really grueling and difficult challenge for a lot of people. It always is, because I always use that exercise. But I really asked them to look beyond that, because we see what we see physically, but how are we functioning? How are we functioning on a cellular level? How's the spirit in our face, the spirit in our eyes, the energy? How are we communicating what we're feeling inside and expressing that outwardly? That's much more powerful. Listen, I'm 5'7.5". Inside, I'm 7'2". That's what I always say. And it's true, because my objective is to function up here. And I don't do that because of my physical attributes. I do so because I'm physiologically, I'm functioning at my absolute best. What is physiological? Everything from a cellular level through to our circulatory system, our endocrine system, how we breathe, how we slow down breath, how we function during adversity and challenges. Hormonally, we go through an upswing or a downswing. How do we maintain that balance under duress? How do we not create conflict? How do we alter our connection with others? And that I bring in the martial arts, because we either are head to head or we shift that energy out the way and counter it rather than absorb it. So the physiological essence is way internal. And that's where I like to interact with people, to get them to understand the way they function and dysfunction.
And you actually run a full battery of tests, right? To when you start out with your clients, you do blood work, you look at how they're standing, you look at how they're walking, how they move, so that you get the full picture of truly how they are physically and physiologically, so that you can address all of those concerns simultaneously.
Absolutely. And the reason I do that is because we start with a baseline. Why a baseline? Because that gives a very, very clear picture of what we're looking at together. We work as a team. We identify what's amiss. So, what's the blood workup showing, and why is it at a level where you are so highly stressed that's impacting some of the physiological variables that slow your body down. We look at structural alignment. Why structural alignment? Because communication is nonverbal, primarily. I'm having a conversation with you, but at the same time, the way I'm connected to my seat, the way I'm connected with the ground, 90-degree angle at the hips, 90-degree angle at the knees, feet on the ground. The point, right? The first kidney point, Yongchuan, is connected to the ground. Energetically, I'm upright. Energy comes through by way of the head. And why I use those terminology, because I studied with a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I had a pain and injury clinic when I lived in Israel for 14 years. So the whole idea is to look at the whole picture. And the second part of that question, if you wouldn't mind reminding everybody, that would be great.
Yep. The second part was addressing the whole person and the emotional and spiritual aspects, or as you are saying, the energy level of each person.
Right. And I don't differentiate between spirituality and emotional. When you're emotionally centered, you can elevate yourself spiritually. And so spiritual awareness, it can be anything for anybody. It doesn't have to be something that's theological. It can be presence, awareness of your surrounds, interacting with everybody around you. It's a connection that you have. It's a greater being, thinking that it's not only just about you, it's about how you communicate and how you interact with everybody around you. It's that web of connection, and you're not isolated.
So this actually leads perfectly into a great question from Julia Cope. Julia, I'm just going to read this out loud because it's a nice long introduction and then question. She says, your point about getting clients to the point where they start to reveal their true selves to you so that you can start to work authentically together resonates with my experience. Apart from busy executives, I see a connection for expatriates in that we often have a public persona, and it can take time and courage to reveal that to others and really see the benefits of showing our true selves. What do our communities need to make it safer for us to show up authentically for the majority of the time? And this is a great question for you, especially Paul, because you were an accompanying partner and also have this great background in performance coaching.
That is a great question. One of the things that I always emphasize when I first sit down with someone is transparency and honesty. And you bring authenticity into it. Has to be authenticity. If you're prepared to make the change, if you're willing to make the change, change will happen. It's not an assertion, it's a declaration. When you make a declaration, you emphasize that you're going to move forward. And if you make that statement, you're putting it out there to the universe. The objective is to be true to yourself. Be honest, be authentic, bring to the table what you really want to achieve, and then you'll achieve it. But you're only going to undermine yourself if you're not honest and transparent. And so for me, it's really imperative when I work with somebody that that person, I do this contractually, that person is clear and honest with their objectives. And you know what? They might bring to the table something that might be very much on the surface. But once we sit and once we begin to understand the way they think, the way they function, even the way they stand and the way they move, for decades, I've been observing people. I know what they bring to the table when they sit in front of me, when they stand, when we connect. I see the issues immediately, not all of them, but it gives me a relatively clear picture of who's standing in front of me. And it's that clarity that we need. So one of my practices is I'll stand in front of a mirror and look at myself and ask myself, what do I want to achieve today? From a level of authenticity, honesty, and transparency. And when I do that, I take ownership from what I'm about to move forward with. And I'll see that in the way I stand, the way I communicate with myself, the intonation, the feel that I have, and the energy that I'm projecting. If I'm honest with myself, I can see it, I can hear it, and I can feel it. It's the same when somebody stands in front of you. You've always got to be confident in your grounding. And when you do that, you have the ability to move forward infinitely without hesitation.
How did you find though, and because I think Julia's question also touches on the added layer of our identity as a diplomatic spouse, for example, where there are certain things that we have to be careful about talking about. There are certain topics we have to avoid sometimes. We do have to filter, and we often have to put on a face when we are out with people that we don't know very well. So do you have any advice on how to be authentic or as close to authentic as possible when there are these extra filters and faces that we have to put on?
Absolutely. And we all live by rules and regulations, and being authentic doesn't mean that you need to divulge everything. You need to be clear and comfortable with what you want to share, what you're about to share. And to know that you exist in a realm where you're interacting with somebody and you're communicating with someone in a level of comfort, in a level of honesty and transparency. It doesn't mean that you need to divulge everything. but you've got to be comfortable within yourself. And when you can do that, that's being your authentic self.
I think that's the key, the ability to let go, to show up and to be communicating with best intent, and whatever comes out, as long as it's meant in a good way, if someone takes it in a different way, that's their filter, not yours.
And you're not there to influence the way they think. You're there to be honest. You're there to be as transparent as possible, as clear as possible, without feeling that you need to divulge everything.
Perfect.
And that's okay.
Julia and Karen, have we answered your question sufficiently? I just wanted to make sure that we're hitting everything that we needed to hit with the group that's here. You can give me a thumbs up or unmute yourself and say yes, or follow-up question. Karen.
I was just going to say that there was a moment when the sound cut out. And so I didn't catch the piece about differentiating between spiritual and what was the differentiation? Is my
On an
question.
energetic level, between spiritual and energy, or spiritual and physiological.
Perhaps, like I said, the sound cut out, so I wasn't sure what that comparison was. And then coming back, when you mentioned the physiological, for me, that's, as a physical educator, everything that you mentioned about the endocrine system, the skeletal and so on, that is the physical for me. So that's why I was asking that question. But for me, the way you described it, that seemed to be more the spiritual connection of the person, the emotional connection of what's happening internally, to bring that forward, to be really aware and present with how your body is reacting in the moment.
Absolutely. Sorry, I actually lost you for a second, but
Okay.
we're having a little bit of a block here. But I think the spiritual is a huge part of performance and functionality. And some people might feel it's theological. Some might feel that it's just greater awareness to a greater entity and a greater energy around us. It's just being connected, to know that you're not in it alone, and to know that you're creating links and communications with everybody around you from a state of centering, stillness, and balance, where you're actually able to function and connect with somebody effectively, knowing you're strong, determined, and have greater self-awareness of what's around you. In terms of the physical and the physiological, in my business, I do differentiate between them, because when I look at somebody's physical structure and I'm assessing their body language, which is a reflection of what's happening on the inside, their presence is a form of communication. Physiologically, when we're looking at their blood screenings, we want to understand how they're functioning on an energetic level, and what do we need to possibly alter nutritionally, or through exercise, or even through stillness, to avoid some of the excess stress and the overthink. So that's why I divide them, although they're all interrelated. And that's what creates high energy performance. And that's why I differentiate them the way I do.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
We're touching again on the combination or the relationship between stillness and motion. Could you dive into that a little bit more, Paul, about how stillness does lead into motion? And maybe this would be the time for that great exercise that you had planned for the group.
Absolutely. So for me, and for the people I work with, it's learning to understand a foundation. The foundation of stillness is not apathy. It's not complacency. It's a way of being centered and being present, effectively compartmentalizing, and knowing that you are capable and apt to do anything that you want to do based on being well grounded. And so out of stillness comes great movement, great motion. Potential energy turns into kinetic energy. The power of being grounded and aware of what exists around you allows you to connect or to shift. And when you are well grounded, when you are centered, when you are still, you can then refine how you can effectively communicate inside and outside the workplace. So let's do a little grounding exercise. And again, I'm drinking Shaupur tea, which is really a grounding tea. It's very earthy. But all I'm going to ask you to do, if that's okay, is to just sit back in your chair or wherever you are. Okay. You want your hips at a 90 degrees, your knees at a 90 degrees, your feet rooted into the ground. You want to be relaxed. The neck muscles are secondary muscles of respiration. So you want your thoracic cavity to be able to expand and contract without resistance. Your diaphragmatic breath. You want your diaphragm to be elastic. The intercostal muscles, the muscles between the ribs, you want them to be elastic, which means that you need to relax. And in order to relax, it's important to be able to effectively shut down. So I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to request that you close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to center yourself. Clear your mind. Connect with the ground. With everything that's happening around you on a daily basis, stillness begins to dissipate. What we effectively want to do is to return you to center, grounded, aware, relaxed, elastic, not rigid, moving like a bamboo, rooted into the ground and able to move irrespective of the environmental conditions. Your abdomen is warm, your arms are relaxed, your shoulders are relaxed. As you begin to expand and contract in a full breath, I want you to use your abdominal breathing, which means as you breathe in, I want you to expand the abdomen in a slow, rhythmic expansion, and then release as you breathe out and relax your abdominal contents. Breathing in again, in a reverse breath, expanding the abdomen, and breathing out. All this time, your body begins to relax more. Your feet are well grounded. Your body is upright. Your spine is erect. You're seated with the head facing forward. As you take a deep breath in one more time and a breath out, the body continues to relax. Your neck muscles relax. Your facial muscles relax. Your countenance begins to shift. All the muscles in your face connected to the neural network in your brain begin to relax. The cranial sutures of your skull, at the base of your skull, the subocciput, around the eyes, the oculi muscles, The ears, the masseter muscles of the jaws begin to relax. The forehead begins to melt, relaxed, calm as your body is upright. From here, I'd like you to enter to the center of your mind. Charged, you can feel that synaptic overflow, the connections between the synapses firing. I'd like you to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and see that synaptic firing begin to slow down. That electrical activity of your brain begins to slow down as you compartmentalize, create greater presence. Your external environment becomes very quiet. Your internal environment becomes still. This allows you to create greater mental acuity. Your cortisol levels lower. Your dopamine, your oxytocin, norepinephrine, positive chemical substrates of the brain, your endorphins begin to elevate. As you feel your body elevate, but you remain grounded, so you're lengthening your body. The motor neurons that innervate muscle, tendon, ligament are firing effectively. Your breath is slowing, your blood pressure lowers, your heart rate lowers as you remain connected to the ground. This is your specific place. No one can enter this. Inside your workplace, outside your workplace. This is the stillness that you strive for. This is your ability to define your potential and master yourself, knowing that you're strong and determined on the inside, soft, malleable, and accepting on the outside. Just like the water element, fluid, resilient, accepting, elastic, and centered. And as you take a deep breath in and expand the abdomen, you feel a sense of greater purpose, a balance between growth and renewal. You've effectively filtered out the excess thoughts, the overthink, the overpressing, overprocessing. Doing so allows you to deliver anything that you aspire to. Because you're calm, you're still, and you're centered, this stillness allows for effective momentum, movement in the direction that you choose to enact. And you can call upon this whenever you wish. This is your subconscious, which powerfully impacts how you connect not only with yourself, but how you powerfully connect with others from a state of grounding and from a state of stillness. This is your ownership, your self-belief, and your ability to deal with any situation that surrounds you. And I'm going to ask you to take one more deep breath, expanding the abdomen. As you breathe out, hold on to this awareness and begin to open your eyes with a new awareness.
That was fantastic, Paul. Is everybody back with us feeling, well, actually, I'd love to hear how people are feeling now. Would anyone be willing to share how they're feeling after going through that exercise?
I'll go if you like.
That'd be great.
That felt beautifully indulgent to me. Thank you. It's taking that sort of time is always like it was only a short time, but the restorative benefits of just taking that moment and going within, quite literally, using the breath really does clear out a lot of stuff. So thank you for that.
So Julia, thank you for your response. I'd like you to imagine being able to use that effectively on a daily basis, because what you're actually doing is reconditioning the way you think. You're reframing the context of your life. And by taking 4 or 5 minutes to actively intervene, because that's what Laura was talking about before, what can you do throughout your day? As difficult as our days are, because there's so much happening around us, but what do we do when we can actively filter out and learn to respond rather than react? And it's this process that is different for all of us, but it's a powerful way of reconnecting and reestablishing stillness so we can effectively move on.
And Paul, Puyan wrote into the chat that she's using a standing desk. And she felt herself standing taller, straighter, and more confident.
And in all honesty, I'm sorry, who said that? I didn't hear it first.
Puyan.
Priyan. So Priyan, here's something interesting, is that when you do that and you remain connected to the ground, because I love standing desks, and I have a treadmill desk, and so when you can do that, you effectively alter your alignment. And when you alter your alignment physically, you can powerfully alter your alignment cognitively too. And this is the respiratory process. It's the ability to dump what's not working for you and work with what is working for you. Hence the alignment.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I did definitely feel I initially started off with just standing on my right foot. Then through all the positive suggestions, I was moving towards both, and then felt really connected, starting from the bottom half of the body all the way through my soul. And yes, and then I was able to see my shoulders broadening, straightening, and it was very, very enlightening and refreshing. Thank you.
That's a pleasure. And that's your physical symmetry. And that directly relates to your cognitive symmetry too.
Yes, and internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm wondering if it would be all right with you if I took that portion of our presentation today and turned it into an MP3 for anybody to listen to on repeat throughout their day to help them.
I'd be happy to do that. My objective is to be able to influence as many people as possible. And please do.
Okay. Super. Yeah, that way we can take it with us, have Paul in our pocket for any time we need a little reboot, a reset to keep us going and standing tall.
Right. And that's a generic form. I mean, there are different modalities with that. But if you can use that on a daily basis, it's a great trigger. and a great catalyst for altering your balance between growth and renewal, coming from a place of stillness.
Well, and on that note, we have reached the top of the hour. I want to honor everybody's time, especially your time, Paul, because it is getting late there in Atlanta. You had said that you were going to put together a couple of great extra bonuses for the people who attended today. Would you like to talk to us about those?
Absolutely. And so if anyone's interested, I do have my Immortal Executive 14 success principles, which demonstrated through physical performance and critical conversations. And that's a PDF that I am happy to share with anybody who's interested. The other thing is I would be very interested in connecting with the first 5 people who are interested in connecting with me for a 15-minute interactive Zoom connection, and just to look at potential and being able to unravel some of the things that you're holding on to that you wish to alter in a short, succinct, and condensed version. So for the first 5 people, I'm at paul@immortalexecutive.com, and I am here to serve you. So please use the opportunity.
And I just put the email address into the chat box so everybody could copy and paste and get those emails to you right away. Paul, is there anything else that you want to share with the group today?
No, I think what's really important, and I think sometimes it's very, very difficult as an eligible family member, as somebody who's altering their environment, constantly shifting from one location to another location, is to find grounding. And so if you can work on step by step developing stillness in order to create momentum, you can effectively create a very, very important transition, as I learned when I went through the process.
Absolutely. And any other questions for Paul? Last opportunity to have Paul at your fingertips right here.
I have a quick one. Well, I have one, and I think it's a bigger conversation than the time we have. But I'm just wondering, Paul, if you've noticed that people come to you generally when they're mostly broken from some experience or some trial that they've been through, and that's kind of brought them to a point where they've reached out. The reason I'm asking you this question is that some of the breakthroughs I've had in my life have been a result of getting to that point where things have gone really, really wrong. And I just wanted to ask you, is that how your clients come to you? And also, what would be your words of sort of motivation or encouragement for people who have had that experience, and to give them hope that this can be a launching pad for something really good to happen?
Well, first of all, Julie, I really appreciate your honesty. That's a great way. To create ownership. One of the things I will say is people come to me for many, many different reasons. Often they come to me for a reason they're not even sure why they come to me. But once we begin to unravel the initial issue or the surface issue, there's a lot more under the surface. And that really comes forward when I ask people to be transparent and honest. So somebody might come to me for something that might be a physical issue, an irritation of a lumbar spine, but they are really dealing with adverse issues at work, which is causing them to sit longer hours and not know how to shed that weight per se. So it's being able to look at the whole picture and understand where they're coming from and really hone in on some of the underlying issues which we work on to affect change. So in terms of a motivation, anybody can create change irrespective of age. And there's always possibility. Possibility comes through awareness and ownership. When you're willing to take ownership in order to create change, it will happen. And I say this decades of successfully working with people. And not everyone's a success because not everybody has that ability to take that ownership. Bring it to the table, we work through it, and your long-term objectives will come to fruition.
Thanks.
Anyone else have any other questions for Paul? Thank you so much, Julia. Well, I want to really quickly, before we wrap up, share this incredible article that was so on topic that I couldn't even believe it. I picked up this magazine the other day when I was, I think, at the dentist's office for my kids. And inside, there's an article titled Tea at Any Cost. This is the Tokyo Weekender, the September 2020 edition. And the article is written by Taryn Jackson. And the article, Tea at Any Cost, is about how Kyoto's tea masters are explaining why drinking matcha is essential during COVID-19. And just as a quick excerpt, okay, put yourself late 1945. 4 pilots sit on the beach of a tiny Pacific island. Their planes are being fueled on the tarmac nearby. The tanks are not filled completely, for these young men will not be returning. They are going to fall from the sky in the name of their country. Instead of using the usual kanpai, which is cheers, with a dish of sake, the final act of these kamikaze pilots before careening into death will be to drink tea. Before them kneels a 5th pilot, but he will not take to the skies today. He's been deemed too valuable as a cultural resource, for his father is the master of one of Japan's most important schools of tea. As the young tea practitioner brews matcha for his comrades, he hopes that the tea will give them the clarity and strength to persevere as they face their greatest fears. And then it goes on to say, when guests visit him for tea, this particular tea master explains the cultural history of Japanese tea. He speaks of the Sengoku-era warlords who drank tea before battle. Similar to the case of the kamikaze pilots, matcha and the ritual surrounding it provided samurai with focus and discipline in the face of death. He says it made them clear-minded and aware of the present. These are the ideal elements to introduce into your own daily rhythm in the modern day as well. So from Paul's lips and also from the words of Taryn Jackson, find that thing that is your tea that allows you to slow down and find that stillness in your life so that you have the clarity, the presence, and the strength to face whatever it is that is coming at you in your day. And hopefully it is not anything near what the kamikaze were facing, and that you would be able to drink one cup of tea knowing that you'd be coming back for another. And I'm going to thank you now for all coming to this session of Empowering Perspectives. I'm so glad to have you all here. Looking forward to seeing you again next month, November, the 3rd Tuesday of the month, which will be the 17th in Asia. Well, 17th. Yeah, 17th in Asia, maybe the 16th in the United States. We will be hosting a woman whose courage is incredible. She went blind as an adult or as a teenager and into her adulthood, and used that experience, leveraged that experience to introduce legislation in her home country of Mongolia to help other blind people and advocate for their rights, and continues to campaign for blind awareness and disability awareness generally wherever she lives. She is one incredible person. I'd also like to plant the seed that if you have a story to share, or if you know someone that you would like to help share their story, please let me know. Thank you again all for coming. Paul, thank you for your great guidance today, for the resources that you're sharing, and for helping us to find our moment of stillness in this crazy day.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. See you next month. Bye.